Today we're going to be talking about how to not take things personally. This is something that has affected so many of our lives, where people say something and we take it personally and we make things about ourselves. And sometimes maybe, like, what would you do if two people were walking down the hallway and they turned and they looked at you and then they looked at each other and they just started laughing? It's like, what would go on in our mind? Or we think, oh, maybe they're laughing at me, or maybe they think I'm silly, or they just said something mean, or would you be thinking, hey, they must have noticed I have some new shoes on and maybe they want to find out where they can get some too? Or like, what goes through our minds when certain things take place? Or maybe people say some mean things or some hard things and difficult things. How do we stop ourselves from being so hurt or from being so sensitive in situations where it can cause us pain or hurt? So today we're going to be looking at 4 very practical steps that you can apply immediately today to stop taking things personally. My name is Enoch Leffingwell, and here at the Army of Youth, we are passionate about helping young people to identify their unique talents and to dedicate them to Lord's service. If this is something that interests you, I encourage you to subscribe and follow us on social media so that you can get more messages just like this one. So how can we stop taking things so personally? Now, what does that mean to take things personally? A lot of times where we begin wondering, as sometimes people can say criticism, or maybe people are giving helpful feedback. In their mind, they're trying to assist and to encourage. And sometimes we're not very good with feedback, or we think people are being critical towards us or towards me as an individual, and then I get hurt. And when I get hurt, I want to avoid people, or I want to avoid feedback or counsel or whatever the case is, and it causes us a lot of pain and suffering that really I want to help you to be able to eliminate this so that we don't have to be suffering so much in life. One of the big things that I have learned, the big idea number 1, is to trade your expectation for appreciation. Now, what do I mean by that? A mentor of mine, Sebastian Braxton, taught me one day that all upset is because of unmet expectations. And I thought about that, I'm like, what? All upset is because of unmet expectations. A lot of times when we get upset, trace it. Like, I challenge you to look back and think, like, what was the expectation that didn't happen? Or there was something that was expected and didn't go the way I wanted, and then I got upset. I mean, I saw it across the board. When I first learned this principle, I began to realize that... Hold on. I apologize for that. When I began to learn this principle, what I started to do was I would look and wonder, what is the expectation here? When I see someone in that household who got upset, they were frustrated about something, or I noticed that they were starting to get bothered, and I'm like, what was the expectation? What happened? And then maybe there was maybe someone responded a certain way that they weren't expecting, and so they started getting hurt because they were starting to take things a little personally. And but what I started to realize is the moment that we start getting upset, in that moment, think, what can I appreciate about this experience? What can I appreciate about the individual or this experience? What can I learn? What am I gaining? What can I appreciate? 1 Thessalonians 5:17 says, "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you." Now, would God ask us to be thankful for something that would mean to do us harm? Absolutely not. So with this, we can be certain that there is something that we can be grateful for in every situation, every unmet expectation. And you could be upset or you could be grateful, but you can't be both at the same time. So whenever you're going through this hurt, look for something in that moment to appreciate. And it could be to appreciate about the individual, or maybe just recognizing the situation. Maybe it's growing you, or maybe there is opportunities to exercise love and compassion and patience. Hey, is God punishing you, or is he answering your prayers? Have you been asking for patience lately? Then this might be an answer to your prayer. Whatever the case is, number 1 is trade your expectation for appreciation, and it transforms a lot of things, and we stop taking things so personally. The second thing that I learned is to give others give others the benefit of the doubt that you actually give yourself. Now, what do I mean by that? Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, Jesus says, do to others what you would have done to yourself. So in other words, I see that, well, I give myself the benefit of the doubt when I'm making an unmet expectation with someone else, or when my behavior is different than what they expect. And so if I give myself that benefit of the doubt, then why don't I give that to others? So here's this fundamental error that we tend to attribute as human beings, that when it has to do with someone else's unmet expectation or something that they've done, we tend to attribute these to a personality conflict or an issue. We take these things personally, or we start thinking about their thoughts and their feelings, their motives, their character, what goes on in their head, things that we don't really know. But when dealing with our own issues, or the things that we say, or the things that the unmet expectations that we create, we attribute these things to environmental or circumstantial situations. So for example, let's say sometimes I would be like sending a message to a friend, or like maybe we find ourselves texting someone, and then they see my message and they don't respond, and it's like, oh no, did I say something wrong? It's like, should I apologize? It's like, oh, I maybe I offended them, or why didn't they respond to my message? It's like, oh no, what did I do wrong? And I'm starting to think like, how could I have said that better or different, or like, what should I do differently? Or maybe, and so I start like guessing like what happened, or what's going on in their mind. I think that there's something that I did to them, but that's me taking things personally. So what is so much better is like, well, if I read a message and I don't respond, a lot of times I go through and I think, well, yeah, I'm busy, or I'll respond back to them soon. Sometimes I forget, but I try to, or maybe there's just a lot of things going on in life right now, and I would love to. I liked what they said. I'm excited to respond to them, but I might delay. I don't do it immediately. So when attributing to myself, I credit it to circumstances or the environment. But in attributing to others, we tend to we're inclined to attribute to their thoughts or their feelings or personality, like something that's going on in their mind. So anytime that you are tempted to attribute these things, that these unmet expectations, to something that they feel, or maybe they don't like me, or maybe they're upset with me, or maybe I hurt them or something, flip the script and start thinking, well, give them others the benefit of the doubt you actually give yourself. And start thinking, well, maybe there's an environmental thing, or maybe they're busy, or maybe they've got something going on. And realize that 1 Corinthians 13, 5-7, it talks about how love thinketh no evil. And love beareth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. So give people that benefit, the belief that they mean to do well, and they're not out to get you, or they're not out to get me. And when we could really give others the benefit of the doubt that we actually give ourselves, it can make a huge difference in us not taking things so personally. So that's a big idea number 2. Number 3 is so helpful. It's not about you. Remember this. It is not about you. A lot of times when we are taking things personally, every time we're taking it personally, it's because I'm thinking about myself, or I'm making it about me. Somehow, maybe someone looks at me a little different, or maybe they respond, their body language, how they move, or their tone of voice, or something that they say, and I'm just like, oh, they're upset with me, or maybe they're angry, or it could be that they are saying rude things, or saying mean things. Maybe they're yelling at me, or maybe I could be trying to share the gospel with people, and they get really upset, and they respond in this intense way, and I'm like, oh no, and I feel rejected. Or I'm trying to share an opportunity with my friends or my family, something that I believe has helped me, and I want to share with them, and I'm excited to share, but then they cut it down, and they talk about all these problems and things that could go wrong, and then I'm like, oh, I feel hurt, I feel rejected, I feel like this is, they don't like me, they don't support me, and why are they doing this to me? And this is all about me, but it's not about me. A lot of times it's so helpful to realize that there's an experience that they've gone through. If they're upset with me because I'm sharing the gospel, they're really not arguing with me, they're arguing with God. and who I represent. And that's the same thing with Samuel the prophet. When they asked for a king, Samuel was like, God, they're rejecting me. But God's like, look, Samuel, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me, that I would no longer be their king. Give them a king. It's not about you, Samuel, it's about me. And when we could distance ourselves from the experience, from the words, from the experience, what they're going through, and realize that it's really not about me. It's like whatever other people say doesn't change who I am. Then we can free ourselves from other people's opinions. And we can free ourselves from other people's expectations that they try to heap upon me. But we can simply say, I don't accept that gift. And I'm going to give that to you. I'm going to give that to God. But don't make it personally. Take it personally. Because truth be told, taking things personally is one of the highest forms of selfishness. Because it is self-centered. It's about me and my issues and my problems. If someone is going to go so far as to hurt you or say hurtful things, something that helps me is to realize that hurt people hurt people. They're not trying to hurt me because really it's something for me and myself that warrants such like affections of their thoughts and attention, but it's really they're in pain, they're hurting, and they're a victim of this situation, because anyone who's willing to sow poison and speak guile in such a vehement way is they're suffering, they're going through some hardships. So when I can understand the pain and the hurt that they're going through, make it about them and what they're experiencing and not me, then it transforms everything. I could endure so much more and not get overwhelmed or stressed or tired or just hurt, but start asking like, Lord, how could I help them? How could I alleviate their suffering? And pray for our enemies. Because praying for our enemies often does a lot more for us than it does for them. It changes the way we perceive our perpetrators and perceive those who are going through, those who are treating us wrong. So when we're able to recognize that it's not about you, then it transforms everything. So that's the third idea. The fourth is looking at the example of Christ and realize, how did Jesus handle these situations? A lot of times we feel that our emotions, our thoughts, and the way that we react is completely out of our control. And if someone is antagonizing us and they're constantly bombarding us, then this is why I get so hurt. This is why I get so offended. But when we look at the example of Christ, like, how did Jesus handle it when people treated him poorly? Jesus taught us, when someone smites your cheek, turn the other cheek. But did Jesus live up to that example when he was going to the cross and they put a cloak over his face, blinded him, and the soldiers, they smote him, they smacked him on the cheek, and they're like, who is it? Who is it that smote thee? Tell us, prophet. Who is it? Prophesy to us. And they spit in his face. How did Jesus respond? Did he turn the cheek? He went to the cross and he died for their sins. And even while he was hanging on the cross, was he saying, woe is me, oh, why is this happening to me? My people are rejecting me. Or what was he saying? Lord, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Jesus didn't make it about himself. He made it about them and how he can serve them. And even while he's on the cross, he wasn't focused on his life that's being sacrificed and everything else. He's over there witnessing to the other thief on the cross and saying, look, verily I say to you, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. He had such a burden for other souls, and he cared for them. It is at the cross. It is how we respond to other people's accusations and words and when people rub us the wrong way. It's at the cross that we can see the greatest example of the love of God and the character of God. And likewise, in your cross, in that moment of temptation, when you're tempted to make it about you, to take things personally, this is your opportunity to reflect Christ. In no better way, no greater way can you reflect Christ than under persecution, when under attack. And when you recognize that it is that when we could trade our expectation for appreciation, it changes everything. When we can give others the benefit of the doubt that we actually give ourselves, it can help us so much. When we realize that it's not about you, and recognize that it's about them, or it's about someone else. Like, hurt people, they hurt people. And when we can look at the example of Christ, then we could be overflowed with strength and encouragement and joy, and realize that we can have such a love that we can cheerfully bow and take up our cross and follow Christ. Because Luke 14:26 through 28, the Bible says, if any man seek to be my disciple, let him take up his cross and follow me. Otherwise, we cannot be a disciple of Christ. So friends, I want to encourage you, the next time you think about taking things personally, or when you're tempted to get offended or hurt by what other people have done or said, just remember, you can't you can't change your circumstances, but you can choose your reaction. And I hope that these 4 steps have been helpful for you to not take things so personally. And friends, if you would like an opportunity where you could be surrounded by people who love you, who encourage you, who can strengthen you through these difficult times that you're going through. A lot of times we can hear these things, it's like, wow, I'm encouraged and I'm strengthened to do this. But when you can surround yourself with people who are going in a similar direction, who are striving in like manner to not take things personally, but to live for Christ and for others, and to dedicate their talents to Christ's service, it can help so much. So I want to extend an invitation to you to come meet my friends, to come meet my family. And every week, the Army of Youth, we get together to have these online small group Bible studies. And we call them squads because we're part of an army. And in this, there's gospel soldiers from all around the world. They come together to meet for 1 hour a week, and they study the Word of God. Many things like this, so that we could practical concepts, practical things, actionable steps we can immediately apply to our life to receive a transformation. People's lives are changing in these small groups, and I want to invite you to join us for free. And if you're interested in coming for fellowship, for support, for training, for a discussion where you can interact with other people and practice some of the principles that I learned, that I'm sharing with you today, then I invite you to go to the website thearmyofyouth.com/squads, and I encourage you to sign up today. That's again thearmyofyouth.com/squads, and you can sign up today. If you like this video, then share this with someone else. Who do you know that could use encouragement and equipped for no longer taking things personally? Go share it with them, and together we can help train and rightly train an army of youth to finish the work. And remember, friends, this may seem difficult, this may seem overwhelming at first, but it's so encouraging to remember that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.